Hey folks, welcome back. Today I wanted to talk about simplicity. Brevity is the soul of wit. I know that might be ironic coming from a slug as pedantic and garrulous as myself, but while I might favor redundancy in my scripts, I'm still a fan of games that know where to trim the fat. Hero Escape is quite often one such game, so I wanted to explore that philosophy a bit today. Hailing from the original Rise of the Valkyrie Master set, I think the Izumi Samurai represent the Art of Simple Scape better than anyone. Just look at this clean army card. Containing only a single power, the Izumi Samurai have the ability to do the following. Counter-Strike. When rolling defense dice against a normal attack from an adjacent attacking figure, all excess shields count as unblockable hits on the attacking figure. This power does not work against other samurai. When you combine this ability with their stat block, the strategy becomes obvious. Use their high movement speed to engage your opponent's figures. Then, instead of trying to break through with their measly 2 attack, rely on their beefy 5 defense emboldened by Counter-Strike to win the day. Force your opponent to attack into you, rather than wasting your order markers trying to accomplish something offensively with these guys. This allows you to not only park a threat at your opponent's front door, but also spend your future order markers elsewhere, as the Izumi Samurai generate the most potential value on your opponent's turn, not yours. Simple card design, yet dynamic to play on the battlefield. Your opponent will have to decide whether or not to try and free their trapped figures, or focus on more immediate threats that actually have order markers on them. All of this is captured on a card with only a single power combined with a stat block. To me, this is the Art of Simple Scape, and the Izumi Samurai get a full 3 out of 3 on the Slugometer in that regard. Now, let's look at a counterexample. Sir Dupuis released several years later within Wave 8 of Hero Escape's original run, and has an army card that has always felt over-engineered to me. Let's take a look at it. His first ability, Knight's Courage, is a powerful thematic tool that allows you to significantly bolster his attack power if you draft other knights within your army. Simply waiting until the right moment to charge in should enable Sir Dupuis to achieve his full 7 attack dice, allowing him to snipe high-value targets. Just like with the Samurai, this is a power that synergizes well with his stat block and begins to imply a strategy without having to spell it out. I like it. His next 2 powers are where we venture into overcomplicated redundancy, though. A prime example is Tactical Disengagement 7. When Sir Dupuis receives 1 or more wounds from a leaving engagement attack, immediately roll the 20-sided die. If you roll a 7 or higher, ignore any wounds from that leaving engagement attack. So, here's why I don't like this. First, your opponent rolls a leaving engagement attack. There's a 50% chance that they roll a skull, and if they do, you activate Tactical Disengagement 7 and roll a d20. There's a 70% chance that you roll a 7 or higher, and if you do, ignore the wound that would have been inflicted and leave the engagement without recourse. Then, do this same song and dance for every engagement you leave during the battle. When you calculate the odds, your opponent only has a 15% chance of actually scoring a wound on Dupuis when he chooses to leave an engagement. At that point, why not just give him the already well-understood disengage power, which would allow him to leave engagements without provoking any opportunity attacks at all? I know that a 15% chance and a 0% chance are mathematically different, but is that difference all that significant in this context? Is a 15% chance worth slowing the game down with all the extra rolling for a slight difference to his power? At the very least, flip the order of the rolls. Let the player controlling Dupuis go first, as their 70% chance of success might negate the need for their opponent to roll altogether. It's like the designers intentionally crafted this ability for an optimal amount of tedium. Better yet, compartmentalize the rolling to a single player. Just let the player controlling Dupuis roll a d20. On a 4 or higher, he walks free. It's the same probability either way, and when you spell it out like this, it makes the decision not to give him disengage all the more baffling. Don't get me wrong, I like rolling dice in Hero Escape. but I prefer rolling dice for things that actually matter. Tactical Disengagement 7 is a slow, tedious affair in practice, and it functionally amounts to the vastly superior disengage power 85% of the time, with none of the time-saving measures baked into that design. Blech. Not to spoil things too early, but if you thought Sir Dupuis' final power, Chalice of Fortitude, was going to be a reprieve from complexity without tangible impact, you'd be mistaken. If Sir Dupuis has 4 or more wounds on his army card, add 1 to his defense dice. I'm gonna sound so picky complaining about this power too, but I think it also has issues. I like the idea behind this ability, but a single defense die on a figure near death is so unimpactful that it might as well not be there. Just remove this ability and give him 4 defense on his stat line, or don't. Either way, Chalice of Fortitude isn't moving the needle and just comes across as busy work on his card. A Chalice that grants +1 is nothing, but a Chalice that grants +2 or +3? Now you have my attention. What if the Chalice allowed Dupuis to roll 1 additional defense die for every wound marker on his card? Now you have a fervent knight on a combat high in the heat of battle, zealous until slain. I love abilities that inspire thematic gameplay. Bottom line is you either make the ability matter or remove it from the card. That's my take on game design, at least. Classic Scape is filled with figures that embody the art of simple scape to varying degrees of success. But let's now shift our focus to the modern offerings of Age of Annihilation. I've shared my thoughts on the relative complexity of the War Council designs in a previous video, but even though I think the average modern card is a little too text-heavy, there are a few that thread the needle more succinctly. Anshu the Welkanai is one of my favorite new releases for this reason. A quick look at their stat line shows that speed is going to be their biggest asset, and indeed the powers on their card reflect this. Their Sonic Blast special attack allows them to attack with 2 dice out to a range of 4, plus they can do this twice per turn. Nifty. Their second ability, Flying, allows them to ignore elevations when moving. While this makes for an obvious pairing with their 6 movement, I actually prefer how this power interacts with the 3 attack on their stat line. Since fast-flighted figures can often secure height advantage in combat, a player controlling Anshu now has a potent choice to make. Do you attack twice with 2 dice at range, or swoop in for a single melee attack of 4? The decision you make will often depend on your target. Personally, I just think Anshu is a good, simple figure that still invites meaningful decision-making. Unfortunately, there are other cards within Age of Annihilation that echo the over-engineering we saw with Sir Dupuis earlier. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but one squad I do want to look at are the Knaves of the Silver Scimitar. Man, I've got such a love-hate relationship with them. On one hand, Disengage plus First Assault 1 is simply chef's kiss perfection, allowing the Knaves to engage with their targets, getting an additional attack die from First Assault 1, then disengage to find new targets next turn, all to trigger First Assault again, paints a vivid picture of a squad of blade dancers in my mind, and I absolutely love it. And then somewhere along the way, I feel like the designers lost the plot a bit and roped bonding into the mix. And not even standard bonding, but a much more complicated version, a la the green scales from D&D. See, the Knaves can bond with any pirate or captain hero you control, using their captain's orders power. However, even though they can bond with both, they can only select a captain hero for their captain's way power, not a pirate hero. Even though they can bond with a pirate hero with an ability called Captain's Orders. Okay, that's not good, but it gets even more complicated. The Captain's Way allows the squad to select one captain hero you control at the start of the game to be their chosen captain for the remainder of the battle. This gives the Knaves +1 defense when they're within 4 clear sight spaces of their chosen captain, but it isn't a flat defensive boost. It only applies to attacks from non-adjacent figures. Ugh. Oh, what the slug? I just realized while typing this that the knaves actually can't bond with any captain hero you control. Only the one you select for them at the start of the game, and dang it. We left the knaves in the oven too long. Look, I've been playing this game for 20 years, and even I can't keep track of how this squad is supposed to work. I don't know how a new player faced with this design is likely to manage. I feel like there were two very distinct design ideas that were grafted into each other here, and I can't say how successful the fusion was. What kills me most, though, is that we were so close to that simple design perfection I crave. Get rid of all this junk. Give them an extra defense die, make them common, and recost them accordingly if you have to. This was a good idea. This was not. I'm sorry. Anyways, I think this whole video speaks to my larger philosophy surrounding what I consider to be the best designs in HeroScape. They should be simple enough that a true beginner can understand them, and yet offer enough impactful decision points that they remain engaging to command in all levels of play. This is completely irrespective of their competitive viability, mind you. There are plenty of competitive figures that I think are a total drag to play or play against, and some non-competitive figures that have much more interesting playstyles baked into them. In my opinion, good design does not necessarily represent competitiveness, and the opposite is also true. You're allowed to disagree with that, that's fine, but I want to stress that's where I'm coming from. For example, I think Deadeye Dan is a better designed figure than the Krav Maga agents. No, I won't elaborate on that further.
Why elaborate on that?
No.
Alright, that's probably enough. Thanks for listening to me ramble about HeroScape army card design. I'm sure if you've played the game for a while, you'll have some differing opinions than me, so feel free to share them in the comments below. I'm always happy to talk HeroScape. I've been your host, R.R. Slugger, and until next time, happy scaping.